Black CEO's paralyzed daughter sat alone at her birthday cake until a white single dad said, "Can we join you?" Subscribe for more stories. The rain traced soft, weeping lines down the cafe window. It was a somber, gray afternoon, the kind that hushes the world, making people move with quiet intention, as if waiting for a shift in the atmosphere. Near the window, Amara Johnson sat by herself at a corner table. Her dark, coily hair was pulled back loosely, a few tendrils damp from the city mist. She had on a deep blue sweater, its sleeves drawn down over her hands, a shield against more than just the chill. A small, round cake with white frosting and soft pastel flowers sat before her. There were no candles, no gathering of friends, no sign of family. She stared at it, her fingers still on the arms of her wheelchair. Her lower body had been unresponsive for 2 years now, ever since the accident. A solo mountain climb, one wrong step, and a life was altered in an instant. Today marked her 27th birthday. Her mother would have brought her to this very cafe, a yearly tradition of shared cake and laughter. But her mother was gone, taken by a stroke the previous winter. And her father, Richard Johnson, was an ocean away, likely on a conference call in Zurich, brokering deals with men in expensive suits. Amara let out a slow breath, her gaze falling. She didn't expect a celebration. She didn't even want the attention. But a small voice cut through the cafe's low hum. "Is it your birthday? Can we sing for you?" Amara looked up, blinking. A little girl was standing at her table, her eyes wide with curiosity under a bright yellow rain hat. She couldn't have been more than 6, clutching a drawing of a smiling sun. Behind her, a man stood frozen, clearly taken by surprise. He moved forward, placing a gentle hand on his daughter's shoulder. "Lily," he said softly, "we shouldn't bother the lady." "Sweetheart," the girl looked up at him, frowning. "But she's all alone, Daddy. You're not supposed to be alone on your birthday." Amara watched the pair. The man, her father, appeared to be in his mid-30s, with a kind, handsome face, a touch of stubble, and tired eyes that held an apologetic smile. He was already starting to lead his daughter away when Amara found her voice. "Please," she managed, a fragile smile forming on her lips. "I'd like that." Lily beamed and quickly scrambled into a chair beside her. The man, Jack, hesitated for a moment before Amara gave a single, encouraging nod. He sat opposite her. Lily pointed at the cake. "You don't have any candles," Amara smiled. "I suppose I forgot." The little girl shook her head cheerfully. "That's okay. We can still sing," and they did. Lily led with a child's off-key enthusiasm, and her father joined with a quiet, grounding baritone. Amara watched them, a forgotten warmth spreading through her chest. As they sang the final line, she covered her mouth, her shoulders trembling with silent, hot tears. They were not tears of sadness, but of a piercing, unexpected kindness. The simple gift of human connection was something she hadn't realized she was starving for. Lily tilted her head. "Are you okay?" Amara nodded, wiping her eyes. "Yes," she whispered. "Thank you. That was the best gift I could have asked for." Jack gave a small, understanding nod, and for the first time in a very long time, Amara Johnson didn't feel so alone. A week later, the smell of turpentine and damp clay filled the small art studio tucked away on a downtown side street. Amara sat before an easel, the canvas still stark white. Her left hand held a paintbrush awkwardly. Her right, once her dominant hand, rested uselessly in her lap. It was the third session of a 6-week art therapy class. For Amara, it was an exercise in patience more than anything else. She dipped the brush in a pale blue, her stroke shaky and uncertain. The studio's front bell jingled, and a familiar voice piped up. "Daddy, there she is." Amara looked up, startled to see Jack and Lily at the door. Lily was waving, pointing right at her. Behind her, Jack offered a slightly sheepish wave. Amara's chest tightened, not with embarrassment, but with a surprising sense of relief. Jack spoke to the receptionist while Lily skipped off to the adjoining children's art class. Amara turned back to her canvas, her hand now trembling for a different reason. A few minutes later, a quiet presence was at her side. "I didn't realize you came here." Jack said gently. She looked up. I didn't expect to see you again, she replied with a small smile. He gestured toward her canvas. That's better than anything I could manage. She let out a soft laugh. It's mostly just a mess, but thank you. The silence that followed was comfortable. He didn't ask what had happened to her or offer any looks of pity. He just treated her like a person, and it felt like a cool drink of water. I drop Lily here every week, he explained. She says it's her favorite hour of the whole week, Amaras smiled. She's a special little girl, she is, he agreed. I don't know how she ended up so bright. Amara's eyes softened. Maybe it's because she sees the world without judgment. Just then, Lily's voice called out from the next room. Daddy, we're painting puppies today. Jack grinned. Duty calls. As he walked away, Amara felt a lightness settle over her. Later that week, a storm rolled in, catching the town off guard. When Amara's class ended, she wheeled herself to the door and stared at the downpour. The sidewalk to her apartment was uneven and slick. She hesitated, and then an umbrella opened beside her. It was Jack. He said nothing, simply holding it over them both as his other hand found the handles of her chair. He pushed her home through the rain, a silent, steady guardian. When they reached her building's awning, he closed the umbrella. You okay? He asked. She nodded, and then he was gone. That evening, as Amara sat by her window, she saw a small box on her side table. Inside was a single, perfect lemon tart. A small note was tucked beside it, written in neat handwriting, still rooting for you. For the first time, Amara felt seen not as the paralyzed daughter of a CEO, not as a tragic story, but just as Amara. Over the following weeks, their paths crossed more often at the cafe in the bookstore. One afternoon, she was sketching at a table when Jack appeared with 2 mugs. I thought you might need something stronger than tea today, he said, setting a hot chocolate in front of her. She smiled. Thank you, he sat with her. How's the art coming? She shrugged. It's hard. I don't feel in control of much anymore, Jack nodded. I get that. I was a chef in a top kitchen before Lily's mom got sick. Cancer. I gave it all up to take care of her. After she passed, it was just me and a 2-year-old. Amara set her pencil down. That's a lot to carry. It taught me to slow down, he said. Lily just needed me to be there. After a moment, Amara spoke quietly. I was climbing Bear's Peak. It was my choice to go alone. I slipped. The surgery, the paralysis. And when I got home from the hospital, my mother had passed away. Jack listened, his presence a steady comfort. I'm sorry, he said softly. You don't say it with pity, she observed. I don't pity you, he replied. I admire you. Later that week, as she left the art studio, Jack was waiting under a street lamp. Lily's still inside, he said. Figured you could use a dry ride home. That night, Amara looked at her latest drawing, a soft outline of a mountain, touched with gold. It wasn't perfect, but it felt like a new beginning, a fragile thing growing from a hand held out in the rain. A few days later, her phone began buzzing with a news alert. Her breath caught as she saw the headline. Heiress Amara Johnson crippled after risky solo climb, hiding out in suburban town. Below, it was a grainy photo of her in the wheelchair, taken through the cafe window. The caption implied her billionaire father was ashamed of her. Nausea and dread coiled in her stomach. She felt exposed, betrayed. She turned off her phone and ignored the world. For 2 days, she stayed inside, disappearing from her new, fragile life. A friend, Sophia Cruz, knocked once and left a small stuffed elephant at the door with a note. Get well soon. Love, Lily. On the 3rd night, there was another knock, soft and hesitant. She was buried in a blanket fort on her couch when the door opened slightly. It was Jack, holding a cup of tea. He stepped inside quietly, placing the tea on the coffee table. He didn't speak or touch her. He just sank into the armchair nearby, his presence a silent, steady anchor in the storm of her emotions. They sat in the quiet dark for hours. Around 4 a.m., she woke with a start to find Jack still there, asleep in the chair. He had stayed all night. As her phone and the world had screamed, he had been sitting vigil. A tear slid down her cheek. You stayed, she whispered. He stirred, his eyes soft. That's what you do for people you care about, he said, his voice husky with sleep. A warmth she hadn't felt since her mother's passing spread through her. She leaned forward and placed her hand on his, anchoring herself to his unwavering presence. He didn't pull away. They sat like that as the first light of dawn crept in. Eventually, he stood and quietly let himself out. Amara felt shattered, but no longer broken. She picked up a small, crumpled napkin from the table. On the back, in Jack's handwriting, it said, "I won't let the world steal you." That day, Amara Johnson turned her phone back on. She wheeled herself back to the art studio, not because the world was kind, but because she had found someone who saw her, who stayed for her, and that made all the difference. Under the cafe's warm light, Amara returned to her painting. Each stroke of her left hand felt like reclaiming a piece of herself. The lines wavered, but something authentic was emerging. That afternoon, Jack came in holding a simple wooden frame. He placed it next to her easel. Inside, a message was beautifully lettered. "Beauty isn't symmetry. It's sincerity." He simply nodded and left her to her work. Later, Lily tugged on Amara's sleeve, holding a bag of homemade sugar cookies. "Mara," she said, using her special name for her, "let's decorate." They spent the afternoon at a small table, Lily giggling as she pressed colorful sprinkles on a heart-shaped cookies, with Jack watching from a distance, a gentle smile on his face. The next Sunday, her father arrived. Richard Johnson, a man whose presence usually commanded a room, stepped into the cafe, his gaze sweeping over the scene with a cold appraisal. He approached Amara's table. "Is that the child I've been hearing about?" he asked in a low, measured tone. Amara's stomach clenched. She glanced at Lily, who was happily munching on a cookie. "That's Lily," Amara said, her voice quiet but firm. "She's just a little girl," her father frowned. "You should not be associating with these people." "Is that a good look?" Amara closed her sketchbook. "He's more real than any executive you've ever put in front of me," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "He doesn't judge me for falling. He just stays." Richard's jaw tightened. He turned and left without another word. The weight of his disapproval was heavy, but as she looked at Lily's beaming face, Amara knew she had made the right choice. In the following days, her painting became bolder. She signed each canvas not just with her name, but with her new identity, Amara Johnson. One morning, Amara pushed open the door to the community center's art room. She had volunteered to teach a weekly painting class for children with disabilities. Jack was already there, setting out small chairs, while Lily helped arrange jars of paint. Children began to arrive, some in wheelchairs, some with crutches. Amara greeted each one, and their faces lit up with pure, uncomplicated curiosity. During the class, she watched Lily help a younger boy who had dropped his brush and clean up a spill for another girl, her heart swelling with quiet pride. Later, in the cafe, Amara and Lily painted side by side. Between a shared laugh and a quiet glance, Amara's hand brushed against Jack's over the table. A spark ignited. She pulled back, surprised by the feeling. That evening, as Jack drove her home, she whispered, "It still hurts, but it doesn't define me anymore." In the glow of the dashboard lights, he took her hand. For a long moment, the world seemed to stop, and then he leaned in and kissed her. It was not a kiss of passion, but of deep, gentle understanding. It was the moment she realized she wasn't broken. She had simply chosen someone brave enough to sit with her in her pain. A week later, the cafe was decorated with bunting and fairy lights. A large cake sat in the center of the room, reading, "To Lily," and "The bravest woman I know." The wooden frame Jack had given her stood beside it. The cafe was filled with the small community they had built. As the party started, Lily stood on a chair and spoke into a small microphone. "Thank you to Mara and Daddy Jack for making me brave." Just then, the door opened and Richard Johnson stepped inside. He looked older, more human. He walked directly to his daughter. "I owe you an apology," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I was wrong, Amara. I was scared, and I didn't know how to help you." "I'm so sorry." Before Amara could respond, Lily began to sing "Happy Birthday." When she finished, she added a line of her own. "To the family I got to choose." The room fell silent. Richard stepped forward and took Jack's hand, then Amara's, holding them together. "I see it now," he said, his voice cracking. "This is what love looks like." The room filled with warm applause. Amara felt a sense of peace settle over her. This wasn't the life she had imagined, but it was real, and it was hers. The school auditorium buzzed with the excitement of proud parents. Amara sat in the front row, a bouquet of wildflowers in her lap, with Jack holding her hand beside her. Their friend, Sophia Cruz, sat on her other side, fidgeting with a friendship bracelet. It was the night of Lily's school play. After the final song, the applause died down, but Lily remained on stage, stepping toward the microphone. "I have something important to say," she announced, her voice clear. "Can my family please come up here?" Confused, Jack and Amara made their way to the stage, Sophia trailing behind them. Lily turned to Amara, her eyes shining as she held up a small velvet box. "Mommy Mara," she said, "will you marry Daddy Jack?" The auditorium gasped, then broke into a mix of laughter and happy tears. Amara looked at Jack, who was as stunned as she was. "I had a different plan," he whispered with a sheepish grin. "She beat me to it." He took the box from Lily, knelt down, and opened it to reveal a simple, elegant ring. More than the ring, it was the look on his face, earnest, hopeful, and full of love, that made her own tears fall. "Yes," Amara whispered, her voice breaking. Then, louder and full of certainty, she said, "Yes. Not because you complete me, but because you reminded me I was whole all along." That night, after the crowd was gone, they sat on the school's back steps. Lily was asleep in Jack's lap, and Sophia leaned against Amara's shoulder. "I thought my life was a half-finished story," Amara said softly into the quiet. "But now I know. I was just waiting for the right chapter to begin." Jack kissed her forehead. "Then let's write it together." Slowly above them, the stars blinked on, one by one, like a silent, infinite applause.